Penguin Random House Audio presents How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. End power struggles, break bad screen habits, and transform your relationship with your kids. This is the author, Alok Kanojia, MD, MPH. Introduction. You know your child, right? You've had them in your life for quite some time. You raised that kid, you kissed their bruised knees, you tucked them into bed every night, and you made them eat their broccoli. Over time, you helped them with their multiplication tables, maybe taught them your trademark hookshot and how to clear the breakfast dishes. You've loved them through thick and thin, and you've tried to teach them your values along the way. But when that same beloved kid starts playing a lot of video games, they seem to morph into someone else. Suddenly, they aren't your sweet, bright, obedient, funny, mischievous kid anymore. They become moody and irritable, and their mood swings feel more like the kind of temper tantrums they stopped throwing at age 6. When they've been playing a lot of video games, they can turn into someone almost, dare I say, vicious. No doubt as the fight to control your child's gaming drive has escalated, so too has the tension in your home. Your concern grows the more unrecognizable your kid becomes. Even when the problem is relatively small scale, far from full-blown addiction, there can be frustration. Because when gaming use intensifies, things that used to be easy, like getting them to come down for dinner, get a lot harder. You think you're just doing some basic things, which you've done for a long time, like trying to get them to walk the dog, and they're yelling at you like you just grounded them for a month. Your child is furious, you're frustrated, and you don't understand what's going on. Everything, everywhere, all at once. It seems as though video games have cropped up around us like mushrooms, and the associated problems, not just addiction, but the shortening of attention spans, have skyrocketed too. And like any invasive species being introduced into a new environment without any regulation, the new species has spread rapidly. Unfortunately, we have precious few safeguards in place to protect us against harmful technology. Policymakers, medical providers, and tech companies have, at best, been asleep at the wheel, and at worst, have knowingly created more and more addictive products, carefully studying the landscape to gain an edge on us and on society as a whole. These companies are constantly trying to build a bigger, better, more engaging product, and our protective institutions just haven't been able to keep pace. That's because anything we have to offer that might counter the spread, academia, government, operates on slower cycles. Research studies on, say, how technology affects the brain or how harmful screen addiction could be take 3 to 5 years to complete. Those studies have to pile up in bigger and bigger stacks, then be independently verified before institutions such as the American Psychological Association, APA, will start to make recommendations. Once they make recommendations, it can take 1 to 2 years at a minimum to implement them. Eventually, those changes enter the curriculum of new trainees, who will then spend anywhere between 4 and 10 years in training. And only then will this knowledge be available to the general public. Meanwhile, the biggest gaming and tech companies are specifically designed to be as agile and innovative as possible. Fortnite, one of the most popular games among the younger teenage set, with over 400 million registered users, is updated every 2 weeks. Every 2 to 3 months, the game releases an entirely new season, essentially a brand new world for players to discover. How on earth could we possibly keep up with that? If you're listening to this book, you are likely feeling this kind of dismay. You have a child you feel is spending too much time playing video games. Or you have a child with whom you argue a lot about the time they spend playing video games. Or you have children who are begging you to let them start playing and you want to get ahead of what you think could be a problem down the line. Whatever brings you here, I can help. Takes one to know one. I grew up playing video games, just as your kids are. I actually played a lot of video games, starting in middle school all the way through high school. By the time I went off to college, my habit had escalated to an alarming extent. As my parents will attest, I nearly flunked out of college for playing too often. Unfortunately, I'm not exaggerating. My first year of college, I managed to creep by with less than a 2.0 GPA. My second year wasn't a whole lot better. That was the year I stayed up so late playing video games one night, I slept through my Spanish final. I didn't even try to explain to my professor what happened. I just kind of ghosted him in the whole mortifying situation. My gaming was clearly a problem. My parents tried everything: restrictions and punishment, freedom and support, unconditional love, but nothing was working. After 2 years of college, I flunked out. At that point, we were almost out of options. My parents decided that I needed to get away from my American way of life and move to India, where they had both been born and raised. Even I agreed. It felt drastic, but at that point, drastic was all I had left. I boarded a plane and moved into an ashram. That was a revolutionary change for me. In the ashram, I learned that the thoughts in my mind could be controlled. For years, I had been struggling to overcome my thoughts, my desires. My mind was constantly thinking about gaming. I was reading about it, talking about it, thinking of trying a new strategy when I went to bed. I was getting distracted when I was walking to class. I was watching videos while I was eating. The idea that I could control my thoughts, rather than my thoughts about gaming being in constant control of me, that changed everything. I was so taken by these revelations that I decided I wanted to join the group and become a monk, but my teachers there rebuffed me. Becoming a monk was about renouncing your life, they explained. But I had earned nothing thus far, and therefore I had nothing yet to renounce. You're just escaping, they told me. Go become successful first, they said, and come back when you're ready to renounce that success. So, I decided to go back to school. In the end, I ended up graduating with about a 2.5 GPA, something about that number being written in stone. I am a below average student, and for the rest of my life, I will never be able to change that. Threw gasoline on the inner fire that my time in India had ignited. Within 8 years of flunking out of college, I would start teaching at Harvard Medical School. Controlling your mind. You don't need to send your child to an ashram in India to, quote-unquote, cure their gaming addiction. But it might help for you to understand why the mindset shift I underwent there changed me so profoundly. According to yogic shastras, or ancient texts, the thoughts in our mind come from two places: our sensory organs and the memory of our sensory organs. Think about, say, basketball season. If you're surrounded by people talking about last night's game, or you're watching a sports network or listening to sports radio, all these inputs on the subject will populate your mind with thoughts. As your mind gets populated with these thoughts, you will likely engage in talk about basketball even more. We see this working in both positive and negative ways. For example, a child who is constantly exposed to a certain language will use the same language. They are learning. But the same thing is at work in, for example, children who have experienced trauma. When a child is told day after day that they are worthless, they start to internalize those thoughts. That's also learning, but it certainly isn't healthy or productive. The challenge you now face is that game developers are colonizing your child's mind with the games themselves, conversations in discussion forums about them, Twitch streams, YouTube shorts, and endless TikToks of gameplay. It's no surprise that your child is constantly thinking of gaming. They simply don't have the power to resist. Pay attention to the games your child plays. Look at the sounds, the sights, and the colors projected when things happen. For every level they conquer, they get a bright trophy and a satisfying sound. It's so gratifying sensorially. And so the game sinks even further into your child's mind. This is what you're fighting against: a tide of thoughts in your child's mind. But what you need to do is stop fighting. Instead, you need to decolonize their mind. That's why I advocate for small progress, at whatever cost. It's not just the gaming you have to restrict. The more you can shut down or slow down the massive amounts of sensory input they get from gaming, Twitch, YouTube, whatever, it's all the same, the more progress you can make. The less sensory input your child receives, the more they will rediscover their healthy selves. That's why my Healthy Gamer program works so well. By building an alliance and working a little bit at a time, the mental colonization of your child's mind will diminish. As the mental colonization diminishes, they will actually be more willing to speak to you, and they will be more willing to live in a healthy way. I've worked with thousands of gamers who describe waking up from the fog of their gaming years. They say they didn't feel mentally alert during those years, and I certainly know what they mean. I felt the same way. It wasn't until I learned how to control my thoughts, to fill my brain with things other than gaming, that I managed to wake up. But wake up I did. After my college graduation, I decided I wanted to become a psychiatrist. equal parts shock.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?